need to be ready for the fact that fire is going to come, and if we treat the landscape right, it'll actually be something to celebrate, not something to be afraid of.
My name is Mary KWART, and I had a 30-year career in fire management. I've been on fires in 17 western states. I was working as a fire management officer in Alaska, and that's where you see climate change happening a lot, the effects of climate change happening a lot sooner before down here in the lower 48. The permafrost melting, we were seeing the first fires above the Arctic Circle, and there had never been fires there before.
I'm Mike Lingman, 17 years in wildland fire. I've worked for multiple agencies, and my main job is implementing and suppressing fire on the landscape, primarily suppression, but in the shoulder seasons also prescribed fire. Seeing incidents that are well over 100,000 acres, and you're seeing 5 or 6 of them at a time. So that's unprecedented, and I don't think you saw that 10 to 15 years ago, and if you did, maybe 1 or 2 nationally, but now we're making it pretty much a common trend each year to have 100,000 acre fires and maybe 15, 20 of them all going on at the same time, which puts a bind as far as having enough firefighting resources nationally to actually fight those.
My name is ALEXI, LOVECHIO. I work for an environmental nonprofit organization here in Southern Oregon. It's called KS Wild. Climate change comes up often, especially around fire. People who have lived in the Rogue Valley in Southern Oregon for years and years have noticed that fire season is longer. You know, you kind of have a month or 2 of smoke that you have to deal with now from fires, and they're noticing the summers are getting very hot. Vegetation is drying out, and so when a fire does start, whether it's from lightning, you know, fire is spreading more quickly and over larger areas of land, and so climate change is affecting fire in the fuels that are carrying the fire.
I'm Chris ADLAM, and I work for Oregon State University Extension's fire program. And what I do in that job is, you know, I help people who are trying to find a better relationship with fire. So in this part, the fire killed almost all of the trees, and now there are no live trees left in this particular area. So this is what we would call a high severity fire. We know these conditions, these extreme weather conditions, are becoming more common now because of climate change. We also see there's a lot of trees here, pretty small trees, because this is a plantation, so it's been intentionally managed that way. People wanted to grow trees here. Unfortunately, that means that when they start to burn, that fire can very quickly go from one tree to another and ends up burning the entire area. And of course, we've taken fire out of this system where it used to burn very often, probably every 8 to 12 years in this area, just over and over and over. We removed that keystone ecological process. So now there's nothing to limit that fuel. So when you have a lot of fuel and you have extreme weather conditions, this is the type of fire behavior that you can expect. This forest right here is definitely a lot more diverse in structure, has bigger trees. It also has a lot of small trees. Making it a little bit more variable, where you create some open areas for certain species, and then you leave some dense patches, and you recreate that complex structure that the forest used to have. And even though the climate is changing, that's still our best guide, is what the forest used to look like when it had fire frequently every 8 to 12 years. So leaving the big trees, removing the smaller trees, especially fire sensitive trees that are grown up because of fire suppression, because we put out fires, and creating gaps and clumps that recreate that structure, that complex structure, so that when a fire starts, it'll keep bumping into these gaps, or it'll keep coming out of the canopy of the trees because it's reached the edge, and then it'll go back to being a surface fire. So that's the thing, we need to be ready for the fact that fire is going to come, and if we treat the landscape right, it'll actually be something to celebrate and not something to be afraid of.
There's no living in the West without smoke and fire. I mean, there is the choice to live out here also includes living with fire, and the question is how you want to live with fire, and that's where prescribed fire comes in. Like, if we do enough prescribed fire and fuels treatment around communities, hopefully we won't have to live with devastating fires all the time.
So I definitely see more of a push to manage lightning fires for the good of the forest and the good of all ecosystems that have fire as part of them. And also much more of an emphasis on prescribed burning, which means going to an area and having a plan when you're going to burn it, and you burn it according to a plan.
Fire in the woods, it has a place, and that we should all kind of learn to be more comfortable with fire. Whether that's through prescribed burning and just learning that you can safely apply fire to the ground under the right circumstances, or just understanding that fire does have a place and a role in the forest, and under the right circumstances, can actually be really rejuvenating and not destructive.
We know that so many plants and animals depend on fire. We're really just learning that and scratching the surface at this point. Of course, Indigenous people have known that for very long, but we understand that fire is so important now, and we're looking for ways to bring that back.